In the post-World War II era, Germany has surrendered and the atomic bomb has been dropped, leading Japan to surrendering. Two new opponents emerge from the smoke and are stepping up to duel on the global battlefield. The battle of communism versus capitalism. The defender of communism is the Soviet Union, who will be taking on the defender of capitalism, the United States, in what will be known as the Great Cold War. Feel free to place your bets on the winner, only $2 a bet.
Yay, take my money!
Before the Truman Doctrine, George Kennan, a United States diplomat based in Moscow, wrote the long telegram in 1947. The 8,000-word telegram outlined a strategy for dealing with the Soviet Union. Kennan spoke from the belief that FDR was too friendly with the Soviets in World War II. He said that the Soviets only understood force, and that Stalin, the Soviet Union, and the Communists were inherently expansionist and aimed to weaken all Western powers. Kennan believed that any type of soft diplomacy operation, such as talking it out, would fail. So he called for aid and even direct military support for countries threatened by communist influence. His inspiring long telegram landed him a spot as the U.S. ambassador to Russia in 1952, and his policy of strong resistance provided the basis of beliefs in the Cold War for the next 40 years beyond the Truman Doctrine.
After the Iron Curtain speech by Winston Churchill, Britain stopped sending military and economic assistance to the Greek government in their fight against the Greek Communist Party. Also, they would no longer send aid to Turkey. Due to this, the United States took action to stop the spread of communism. The Truman Doctrine was clear evidence of the United States becoming less isolationist, which it had tried to be for the last 170 years. The Truman Doctrine marked a start of the United States becoming interventionists and would continue on with the Marshall Plan in regards to aid and then expand to sending troops with the Korean War. Truman gave a speech to Congress on March 12, 1947, which presented the Truman Doctrine. The cause of this speech was the announcement by the British government about them cutting aid. The Truman Doctrine called for Congress to support Greece against communism. Truman also called to protect Turkey, since that nation had also been receiving aid from Britain. Truman called for containment, which meant the United States would get involved in global affairs by sending financial or military aid to countries that were in danger of armed takeover by communists. Though he did not specifically mention the Soviets, it was known that the Soviets were commonly perceived as the global center of communism, making this a declaration of the Cold War.
Both the United States and the Soviet Union did not see themselves or their actions as out of place. In fact, they viewed each other's actions as out of line. The Soviet Union viewed the Truman Doctrine as the United States reaching outside of its sphere of influence. They even viewed the United States as a new sort of Hitler because they viewed the Truman Doctrine as expansionism of capitalism and democracy. Similarly, the United States set up such a harsh containment policy because they feared Stalin would become the new Hitler and try to expand communism and totalitarianism through the domino effect. Both countries took bold steps in the name of their beliefs, and this continued to be a trend throughout the Cold War. For this reason, it is difficult for historians to blame the Cold War on solely one of the countries. Often, both of them are blamed.
Turkey is a very strategically placed country because it lays on the Mediterranean Sea and Black Sea. Moreover, it has access to a wealth of oil. Therefore, both the USSR and the US wanted to influence Turkey with their ideas. The USSR, besides wanting to spread their ideas, also wanted control over the Dardanelles, a waterway connecting the Black Sea to the Mediterranean. Specifically, Russia was not demanding control over the Dardanelles, but wanted assurance that this waterway would not be used against them.
Greece's democratic government was being threatened by communist rebels, and because of the containment policy, the U.S. could not allow communism to spread. The United States feared that if the Soviet Union had control of Greece, Turkey was the next step. And if they could get through the Turkish Strait, Greece was probably the next step. So it was in the strategic interest of the United States to intervene before either fell. The United States incorrectly assumed that the Soviet Union was supporting the Greek communists. In reality, Stalin forced Prime Minister Joseph Tito of Yugoslavia to not support the Greek communists.
Since the Truman Doctrine produced such successful results in Greece and Turkey, America got cocky. They thought that money and weapons were the answer to all their problems. However, this was not the case during the Chinese Civil War. The United States decided to send money to the Chinese nationalists, led by Chiang Kai-shek. Concerned with being connected to the Chinese fall to communism, the U.S. only gave money in steady amounts, ignoring Chiang Kai-shek's request for more money. Without further support, the nationalists simply couldn't hold up to the communists, and in May 1950, they fell. The Americans realized they could not just throw money at problems to fix them, and ultimately decided the result of the Chinese Civil War should be determined without overpowering outside influences.
In summary, for the first time in forever, the U.S. decided to intervene against communism. This kept them frozen in a standoff in which they couldn't put aside their feud, or I guess you could say they couldn't let it go. They'd rather act like the Cold War never bothered them anyway. But in all seriousness, the Truman Doctrine had aid given to countries under attack from outside forces, was successful for Greece and Turkey but not for China, gave $400 million to Greece and Turkey, did not provide direct military support but money and weapon aid, led to more hostility between the communists and the capitalists, and historians call it the start of the Cold War.